Hello, I'm Mike Aronson. I'm a member of the Waverley Singers, and I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Rosie May Jones, who is a poet and who's going to read some of her poetry at our concert on the 22nd of June in St Mary's Church, Frensham. Rosie May, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Lovely to see you.
Well, it's fantastic to be talking to you, and we're going to come on to talking about the concert and the sort of things you might be reading there. But can I just start by just getting you to tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, where are you from, and where did you study? And tell us a little bit of your life story so far.
Sure. So I did grow up in Surrey. I grew up in Egham or around that way. In terms of where I studied, so I haven't had a straight trajectory in life. I am a multidisciplinary artist as well as a poet. So I originally studied film in London. And I was a videographer for many years and was doing theatre. And actually, it was through kind of theatre and performance that I came through to poetry, as opposed to a kind of straight literature path. But so I was doing kind of a lot of multidisciplinary projects. And then in the last few years, I recently did a master's course down in Dartington where I was studying arts and place. So a lot of my work is very related to like the landscape and its connection to nature.
So I'd like to ask you more about that, but you said you came to poetry through working in film and being a videographer. I mean, can you expand on that? I mean, how did you come to poetry? What was it that actually made you realize that what I need to do is write poems?
But I think I always wrote poems, but actually to kind of take it into a more professional realm. So I was doing video, but also theatre. I was doing a lot of these kind of productions, which involved a lot of set and costumes and all of these kinds of things. And I got invited to do a piece for Big Noise Festival, and they didn't have much budget but I was working on some various themes and I was writing some things. I was like, oh, maybe I'll just present some writing. And I wrote this kind of spoken word piece. And I remember it being this real revelation that you don't need all of these people and these sets and these costumes. You can just go on stage and speak and have this really direct connection to your audience. And then, they clap and then you leave. And it was, yeah, just a real incredible moment, I suppose. That was a really big turning point for me of going, oh, wow, you don't need all the bells and whistles when you've got the kind of heartbeat of the work.
But so it's obviously very much linked to performance then for you, because I guess some people sit and write poetry quietly, and they sort of imagine it being read quietly by people. But for you, you've come at it really from a performance perspective.
Yes, definitely. And I think for me, when I'm writing, it's definitely I'm always speaking the words loud. It's definitely something that about hearing the words, not just seeing the words.
It's interesting, isn't it? I was reading something the other day which was describing the purpose of poetry is to kind of strip away the veneers of what we see around us so you can sort of see what actually lies behind it. And it's odd, it's interesting to compare that to sort of film, which in a way is almost doing the opposite. I mean, it's trying to sort of create a veneer of something, that is representative of of something else. But poetry is very sort of unlike any other art form, really, from that perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you talk about that because I would say that in that kind of more theatrical and film world, there was a lot of creating the moments. Whereas for me, in my poetry journey, it's been very much about expressing the moments that I've created in a way. So I think a lot of my poetry is this kind of connection to the landscape. And I think that's been a real way in for me to learn more about poetry because I didn't necessarily have that literary kind of background and learning. It can be quite like, where do I go in? What's my in point? And actually, I'm a huge long distance walker. And something for me, a few years ago, I did this 300-mile walk where I walked from the Lake District up to the Scottish Highlands, just me and my little tent. And it was so wonderful. As I was going along, I was researching all the poets of that place. And there's something about being in the Lake District and reading Wordsworth that brings the words alive in a way that, sitting in a classroom would never do for me.
Yes, very interesting. So had you always been an outdoor person then? I mean, had you always done a lot of walking? Was the natural world always an inspiration for you?
Yeah, I think I definitely always had that connection to the outdoors. I mean, where I grew up, our garden backed on into a wood. And I think I spent all my childhood in the woods. And I think for me, being in an office doesn't suit me. Being in clothes, I need that for my brain, for my health. Walking, it helps me process, and it's often where a lot of my thoughts or ideas come from. Is you might have an enclosed period, but then being outside is where inspiration can kind of take you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was inspired. You did a project not so long ago for Surrey Hills National Natural Landscape, and I think one or two other bodies as well. Well, I'm going to ask you to tell us about it, but I mean, I first saw it when I heard that you were going to be performing with us next month. And I looked at the video on YouTube, and we've put a link to it on our website, and it's called The Year 2100. And I found it absolutely inspirational because, it was a kind of cry for help, really. Um, Sort of because it envisaged the world as seen from 2100 as we would like it to be seen then, when we know actually that a lot of the things that are happening around us mean, unless they're reversed, it's not going to be seen that way then. And I found that incredibly moving. So tell us a little bit about that project and how you got involved in that.
Yeah, so that kind of came out of a residency that I was doing called Incubate, which was with the National Trust and Surrey Hills Arts. I mean, Surrey Hills seem to have lots of different branches, but the actual residency with Surrey Hills Arts at Leith Hill Place. Um, and that was a 3-month residency that lots of different pieces came out of, but also this commission for this poem, which was a part of their so Surrey Hills National Landscape Management Plan, and they'd done this postcards project where they collected all of they kind of asked people like, what is your vision for the Surrey Hills in 75 years? And they had this kind of really amazing response. I think they had around 160 responses. And for me, in my work, I work in a way that I do a lot of research. So I gather a lot of different stories, whether that's historical, folklore, but also through interviews and talking to people. So for me, it was this incredible resource because it was like half of the work had already been done. And it was really beautiful to see all of the different things that people had said. And I think it's interesting. Yes, I think that thing around environmental grief, is very real but actually, unless you can imagine the other option, it's never going to happen, right? And I think actually, how do you create agency within people to aim for the, what can we do? And I think involved for me, this research often takes me into people who are very active and are doing things, and that brings me a lot of hope because actually instead of going, oh, the whole climate is changing and we're not going to be able to grow anything, going, okay, if the climate is changing, but there are these things that we can be growing. There are these seeds that we can be saving. And actually giving people agency, I think, is a really important thing. And actually talking and imagining together, imagining a better world.
Well, I think that was a very imaginative way of doing it, actually. I mean, as you say, it's very easy to feel a bit sort of bludgeoned, isn't it, by all the sort of doom and gloom. And actually, something like that, which is just so uplifting was really inspirational. So well done on that. Now you mentioned that you talked about your earlier long distance walk, but I think I gather before we see you next, you're going to be off on another one, aren't you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm planning tomorrow actually. I'm off to the Ridgeway. I'm going to spend a couple of weeks on the Ridgeway. So I'm going to walk it quite slowly with my little tent. And the idea is this is hopefully the start of a kind of practice that I'm hoping to do some poetry pamphlets. So on different long distance walks, but it will just be me and my tent and just, yeah, researching the places I go. Because I think there's something about that as we kind of talked about like how poetry can kind of capture a moment and actually creating an experience and seeing what kind of comes up for you along the way, I think is a really great way of doing it.
And
Um,
there's few things in life more magical than kind of being under the stars at night outside. I mean that let's hope you get some decent weather, but you know that is a real privilege, isn't it, to be that close to nature and to night in particular.
I think that kind of connecting to a place, because a lot of my work is around connecting to places and being in the nighttime, you get a different sense of a place, you know. And I talked a bit about that 300-mile walk. I mean, ending up in a place where you know that people aren't there for miles around can really create a sense of connection to something more than just the human, which I think we can be very human focused in our lives. So yeah, I'm very excited about this walk, and hopefully there's some going to be some nice new poems that come out for the concert, perhaps.
Well, I mean it's great. Great because as I think you know, the other sort of major work in our concert is a poem which is all about nighttime, which oh sorry, is a piece which is all about nighttime based on five poems, five different poems about night. So written for us by Owen Park. Five nocturnes. I'm sure you'll enjoy that in the light of what you'll have been doing just immediately beforehand. So it's great that there's a link. I mean, do you turning to your what you're planning to do for the concert? I mean, are you planning to read existing poems, or are you hoping, as you said, that maybe you'll get some new ones out of this long distance walk you're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of poems I could draw on, but I'm hoping that I will be sharing new things, or I mean, maybe a mixture. We'll see what comes out. But I think darkness is definitely an interesting theme for me, and especially as a woman who likes to go camping and in wild places, which can sorry, um, uh, I think claiming the darkness is actually a really important thing, and I'm definitely someone who I like to walk in places that maybe people would say women shouldn't be walking around in the woodlands at nighttime, but actually, I think it's something that it is important for me actually, and I I get very annoyed when I'm walking along with someone and someone pulls out their phone and they want to light up the path because actually when you attune yourself to the darkness, you're opening different senses and you're actually seeing and experiencing in a different way. I mean, you have these two different cells, don't you, in your eyes, and one of them's for seeing in the dark. And I think actually we've removed the darkness so much from our life. And there's actually this part of ourselves that isn't being experienced.
Absolutely. No, you're spot on about that. Um, so I mean, maybe just to give us an idea, Rosemary, I mean, why don't you just read us something if you wouldn't mind, just to give us a sense of the kind of things that will be kind of going on in your head while you're doing this walk and the sort of things we might expect to hear on the 22nd of June.
Yes, I will. I'm just getting one up on the computer. So this one was also came out of the residency, and it's about walking. I thought it seemed relevant, and it's called Along the Old Way. I have walked along the old way. I have walked across these lands. I have passed from night into day, leaving footprints in the white chalk sands. I've walked along the sandstone ridge and crossed the whaleback downs, taking rest beneath the box and beech, rooted wide and deep into the ground. I have crossed the heather-covered heath and mused upon the hilltop forts with thoughts of those entombed beneath amongst the glassy quartz. I've gazed upon the low-slung weald and traced the paths of Caesar. I have met Norman kings on battlefields, sending Saxons to meet their maker. I've walked along the sunken roads, the ghost roads of the drovers, whose footsteps even rock erodes in the deep woodlands of the poachers. For many a foot this way has been, and many a more is yet to pass. For what I know from all I've seen, this land can soothe the human heart. There is a magic buried here for all those that still believe, but like the silent fallow deer, it takes a stillness to perceive. So step lightly along the old way, tread softly across these lands, and as you pass from night to day, leave only footprints in the white chalk sands.
That's lovely. Rosie May, thank you ever so much for being with us, for sharing that, and for everything else. Have a fantastic time on your walk and look forward to seeing you in Frensham on the 22nd of June.
Yes, looking forward to it. See you on the other side.